What's up, basketball fans? Welcome to the Ratch Report. It is time to talk about NBA trades, and I'm going to be going through a list of trades, five blockbuster trades that could happen. I do want to say these aren't necessarily trades I'm expecting to happen in the next week or two. These are probably going to be trades that happen in the middle of the season or during the off season. As we know, a lot of playoff teams, when failures happen, then a lot of movement will likely happen as well. So if you're ready to watch this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up. And if you wish to hit the subscribe button as well, that would be very much appreciated. So with that being said, let's get into trade number one. Now, trade number one is going to be between the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Brooklyn Nets. And this one is going to be highly unpopular amongst a lot of fans. Now, I say this as a neutral fan. I'm not a Nets or a Cleveland Cavaliers fan. But the reason I do this trade is because when you talk about Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland, those 2 point guard lineups don't necessarily work. Again, I know you could debate that. Is Donovan Mitchell a point guard? Maybe not so, but also you can't have two short guys in the backcourt as well. And you pretty much give the keys to Donovan Mitchell by trading Darius Garland. So between these two teams, this is what the trade looks like. The Nets get Darius Garland, Dean Wade, and the Cleveland Cavaliers get Cameron Johnson, Dorian Finney-Smith, Dariq Whitehead, 2025 first round pick and a 2029 first round pick. The 2025 first round pick will either be OKC's, the Rockets, or Phoenix Suns, which, let's be honest, is probably not going to be a very good pick in this year's NBA draft, considering where those three teams are likely to finish in 2029. The Rockets, the Mavericks, or the Phoenix Suns. Again, the NBA is kind of unpredictable, so you never know what those teams will look like in about 4 or 5 seasons from now. Now, the reason I do this trade, and a reminder that these trades are likely to happen, as I talked about, more so mid-season or even possibly at the end of the season. The simple reason why the Cleveland Cavaliers do this trade is to kind of break up that Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell duo there, the short little backcourt, and with Cleveland Cavaliers now signing Isaac Okoro, you could have Donovan Mitchell, you can have Isaac Okoro, and with the acquisition of Cam Johnson, you can have him playing the 3 position as well as Dorian Finney-Smith, played him at the 3 or 4 position as well, and that has been a long time. If you want to say a hole for the Cleveland Cavaliers, they have obviously tried different guys, trying to fit them in that 3 spot, but also taking into consideration when you talk about who are some of the teams that are a real threat to Cleveland? When we talk about them making the playoff runs, you look at a team like the Boston Celtics. You take a look at a team that really strengthened the small forward position in New York Knicks. They all have good small forwards, shooting guards as well. So Cam Johnson really helps the Cleveland Cavaliers, and he's a good role player. He fits in that system well. He's young enough where he fits Donovan Mitchell's timeline. He's not too old for Evan Mobley as well. And this just gives them a lot of not only good 3 point shooting to surround Donovan Mitchell with, Evan Mobley with, but also just someone that can play a decent amount of defense, right? When you talk about the Cleveland Cavaliers, you talk about their interior defense is amazing. You got Jared Allen, they're protecting the rim. You got Evan Mobley, but they need a player that can guard on the perimeter. Cameron Johnson can do that, but also Dorian Finney-Smith isn't a slouch either on the defensive end. So it really strengthens that power forward, small forward position for them. And then you also get a fairly, young, I don't want to call him a prospect, but Dariq Whitehead is fairly young player. And then you get 2 first round picks. Now, why would the Brooklyn Nets do this? They're tanking for Cooper. We know this. Let me talk about how teams rebuild now as opposed to even if you talk about 6 years ago. Let's use the Detroit Pistons and the Houston Rockets as an example. 2 teams that have tried to rebuild through the draft, and you look at the way that some of the moves they have made recently is trying to acquire veteran players. They drafted Cade Cunningham. They haven't really done anything since Houston Rockets. They drafted Alperen Sengun. They drafted Jalen Green. Haven't really done anything since. And the reason why the Nets do this is simple, guys. You do this mid-season. Darius Garland is going to be a good acquisition for them, and it's not going to be a player that will necessarily, make them a playoff team. He's a good player, don't get me wrong, but I don't think him and whoever is going to be left over by the end of the season is going to be making a playoff push with respect to Darius Garland. He's not adding 10, 15 wins to the Brooklyn Nets, so they can acquire their future point guard here to play along with Cooper Flag, whoever they end up picking in next year's NBA draft. So you get a good foundation built. Again, a reminder, even if you draft Cooper Flag, you also need to keep in mind that you need good players to surround him with. You don't want to draft Cooper Flag and then just go into next year's draft and kind of just kind of hope and do what the Detroit Pistons is, right? Just continuously draft young guys and hope to build. That's not how rebuilding works anymore. And look, you get Darius Garland, you get Cooper Flag, and whoever's still remaining on that roster, you get a good foundation. That's how you build roster nowadays. You look at a lot of teams, that's why they're kind of moving away from just drafting player after player after player and hoping that team becomes a new Oklahoma City Thunder, right? Those kind of rebuilds don't work anymore. That's why I do this trade. Again, this is going to be controversial. Let me know your thoughts on this. Let's move on to trade number 2 here. Now, this is a trade I expect more likely to happen during the offseason, next offseason, as opposed to this season. The reason is simple, guys. If the Phoenix Suns have yet another playoffs where they don't make it past the second round, then all of a sudden it's going to become a big issue for the Phoenix Suns, and in particular for an aging Kevin Durant. He has ties with Ime Udoka, who apparently the Rockets are also really high on Kevin Durant. They want to pursue him. The Rockets do have a lot of interesting prospects, young players they can throw that way, and also a couple pieces that can help match the salary. So the Phoenix Suns, Houston Rockets make a trade next offseason. Kevin Durant just says, you know what, this is not working out with the Phoenix Suns. This is what, 2, 3 seasons now where they just continuously have been knocked out of the playoffs. They haven't made deep playoff runs. So this is how the trade works. The Houston Rockets get Kevin Durant. The Phoenix Suns get Dillon Brooks for salary purposes. They also get Reed Shepherd, Amen Thompson, and Jock Landale, excuse me. So you get some good prospects in Reed Shepherd and Amen Thompson there, obviously. And then you get a 2028 first round top 5 protected and a 2031 top 5 protected. Now, again, I know people are going to look at this and say, well, wait a second. Kevin Durant was just traded a couple seasons ago. The Nets got a lot more picks than this. We need to remind ourselves that Kevin Durant is also about to be, 36, 37, I believe, 36, I want to say. So it's not the same. When you're trading a 33, 34-year-old, yes, he's a little bit old too, but again, it's not the same. Also, just considering the young players that the Phoenix Suns get, Reed Shepherd and Amen Thompson, how can you not be excited about that? And then you also get Dillon Brooks, who, considering the contracts, guys, he's making $22.2 million. He's locked in for 3 years. That is a very reasonable contract to trade. And also, it is very easy to get another first round pick and also some other assets as well for Dillon Brooks if you were to flip him as well. So I like this trade for both sides. Again, the Suns kind of go in a rebuilding mode here. They acquire Reed Shepherd. He's an amazing shooter, as we've seen, in college. Amen Thompson is a very interesting prospect. Hasn't really gotten the opportunity, I personally believe, on the Rockets. And I do feel like the Rockets really need to start moving off of some of the young players. Not enough minutes, not enough ball to go around. And the Rockets now, all of a sudden, they got Alperen Sengun, got Fred VanVleet, they got Jalen Green still, they got Kevin Durant there as well, and they still got Jabari Smith as well. So again, a really good roster there to build off and help really surround Kevin Durant with some good players. And look, if Jalen Green doesn't work there, maybe you flip him for someone else, right? Maybe you help him flip him for maybe a little bit more help defense as well. So the Rockets will have plenty of options even after trading Kevin Durant. But I like this trade for both sides, man. This is a good trade for Phoenix. They get some young players. The Rockets get what they want. They want to win now. Ime Udoka is a coach that wants to win now. So I like this trade. Let's move on to our third trade here. Now, this is going to be a handful. And again, if the Phoenix Suns are moving off of Kevin Durant, guess who's going to be moved next? Yes, Devin Booker. And very, very interesting team. I was looking at a bunch of teams and which team could actually acquire Devin Booker. There's obviously, you could probably list 15, 20 teams around the NBA. Everyone would love to have him, but I got the Memphis Grizzlies here. Memphis Grizzlies acquire Devin Booker to pair with Ja Morant and JJJ, and you, of course, get Zach Edey as well. Again, this is a trade more so for the offseason, guys, when the Phoenix Suns just decide, you know what, this Devin Booker KD combo isn't necessarily working. And in return, the Phoenix Suns get Desmond Bane for obviously salary purpose too, but he's also a really good player. They get Brandon Clark, salary purpose again. You get Gigi Jackson, a really tough player to give up for the Grizzlies, but ultimately you get Devin Booker. He's 27 years old. He fits Ja's timeline perfectly. He's also someone that's going to get you buckets. And I feel like their game is going to complement each other's really well. The Phoenix Suns also get 2026 first round pick, 2026 second round pick via the Clippers, 2028 first round pick, and 2030 first round pick. So they get 3 first round picks. They get Desmond Bane. They also get Gigi Jackson. So essentially you get like 5 first round pick players essentially when you look at it that way. Also taking in consideration, guys, when you think about the Phoenix Suns, they kind of made this trade with the Brooklyn Nets. When they got KD, they flipped who? Mikal Bridges. And the Phoenix Suns kind of get a player similar to that in Desmond Bane, where when you were to flip Desmond Bane in a season or so, And mind you, he's going to look a lot better too with the Phoenix Suns. He's going to be probably number one, number two option there. You flip Desmond Bain, you could probably get a couple first round picks for him as well, right? So all of a sudden, you got three first round picks, GG Jackson, then you flip Desmond Bain, you can get a couple more first round picks there as well. Same thing with Brandon Clark. He's a really good role player that a lot of teams would love to have. You can probably get some second round picks for him as well. So again, I like this trade for both teams. And also, I just want to quickly go back on my last trade here as well, because you take a look at the Phoenix Suns. Now, all of a sudden, you trade KD, you trade Devin Booker, you have Reed Shepherd, you got Amen Thompson, you got Desmond Bain, you got GG Jackson, and you got, look, the amount of picks you get from both of these trades here, you got five first round picks for Devin Booker and Kevin Durant, right? You get four really good young players. Desmond Bain, I believe, is about to be 25, or he's 25, about to be 26, somewhere around that age range. But you flip him as well, and all of a sudden, now the Phoenix Suns are rebuilding, and they got a really good foundation to build off of. You got some good young players that you can play. You also got a handful of first round picks as well. So I like this for the Phoenix Suns. Grizzlies, I like this as well. You get a bucket getter, man. You get a bucket getter. You also get someone that can stretch the floor with Ja being there as well. So I like this trade for both teams. Let's move on to our next trade here. And our next trade here, the Spurs make a surprising move and acquire Jimmy Butler. Jimmy Butler has a player option for next season, but it looks like the Miami Heat don't necessarily want to discuss a new contract with him, and they want to. Apparently, Pat Riley wants to see him take the season a little bit more seriously. We know Jimmy Butler hasn't necessarily been playing a lot of games during the regular season, which has really caused the Miami Heat to drop in the standings. And he was obviously, unfortunately, very injured. Not very injured. He was injured in the playoffs as well, which, I mean, it just was really unfortunate. But the Miami Heat obviously wanted a little bit more commitment. And also just considering he's, 35, 36 years old now, do they really want to pay him $50 million? It's going to be tough for the Miami Heat, right? It's probably easier for them to just tear it up and rebuild. They do have some good young pieces, as we know, they could possibly build around and acquire. But in terms of the trade here, Miami Heat trade Jimmy Butler, to the Spurs. In return, they get Keldon Johnson, who has been a player that's been in the trade rumor mill for a few seasons now. The San Antonio Spurs seem like they really want to trade him. They also acquire the Miami Heat, that is, acquire Zach Collins, Tre Jones, for salary purposes. But then you also get a pretty good couple of good first round picks, 2026 top three protected first round pick from the Spurs. You get a 2026 second round pick via Utah, and then 2027 first round pick via Atlanta. So that was the pick they acquired in the DeJounte Murray trade, the Spurs that was, and they're giving that up, a top five protected, to the Miami Heat. Now, why do the Miami Heat do this? Look, you get a good young player in Keldon Johnson there, and you get, let's be honest, two really good first round picks and a second round pick as well. Zach Collins, I don't know what his trade value will be around the NBA, but it just essentially gives them another player to kind of just stretch the floor for them as well, right? So, of course, Jimmy Butler, as good as he is, I don't know if he's going to get that big of a haul considering his contract will be up after the following season. So again, why do the Spurs do this is the big question. Is simple. You got Chris Paul there. Why did the Spurs sign Chris Paul? They want to surround Wembanyama with win now players. Now, this obviously would be, in terms of fit, would be quite interesting, just because you want guys that can be able to shoot the threes, particularly around Wembanyama, but it is a good roster. I mean, I know it's not the sexiest on paper, guys, but just think of the roster. Wembanyama, you got Jimmy Butler, you got Chris Paul, and all of a sudden that roster looks like a playoff team, right? So again, it's a questionable move for sure from the Spurs point of view, but I could see the Spurs doing something like this, man. I really do. It seems like an odd trade considering the ages of Jimmy Butler, but again, they want to win now. I don't think they necessarily want to wait 3 seasons from now. Jimmy Butler's still probably got another 2 really good seasons in him before maybe he doesn't play as much or doesn't, perform at a high level, but he's been a playoff winner. And I think the Spurs want to make that push for the playoffs sooner rather than later. So I do this trade here for both sides. Again, not the sexiest of trades for, in terms of making sense. I understand it if people don't like this one, but this is the one I personally came up with in terms of where would Jimmy Butler go and which teams could be a surprise team, right? Which team has some young players they could trade? And I came up with the Spurs. Let's move on to our final trade here. And this might be one that might surprise a lot of people as well. Now, this is a trade between the Clippers and the Pelicans. I do want to see, I actually had this trade well before we got news about Kawhi Leonard missing training camp, and also about his knee surgery as well. But even with his knee surgery, Again, this is more of a trade I see mid-season happening. Now, why does a team like the Pelicans want to acquire Kawhi Leonard, an injured player? They got enough of that already. Zion Williamson, we know, and now they're going to acquire Kawhi Leonard. How does that make sense? Simple, guys. When you think about Zion Williamson, what was the big question when he started his first couple seasons with the Pelicans was, can he stay healthy? Imagine if the Pelicans go to another season with the same roster, Zion plays another 70 plus games, and they're still a playing team, which is, look, a very realistic chance of where they might finish, right? Now, all of a sudden, do we start hearing maybe chatter about Zion Williamson wanting out? Because the Pelicans are desperate, whether you want to believe it or not. They acquired DeJounte Murray, a win now player. They also have Zion Williamson, who's probably going to run out of patience sooner rather than later. I don't know how many seasons he's going to go through with the Pelicans, where they're either a first round exit or a playing team, right? So again, this is going to be the big question. And Kawhi Leonard, the Clippers can move off of him. They're not really in the same position they were in past seasons, and just given his contract as well. That's why I think the Pelicans could acquire him. In terms of the Clippers, guys, they acquire CJ McCollum. Salary purpose, simple as that. He's only got 2 years left on his team. On his deal, maybe they flip him for something else. They also acquire Herbert Jones, who I really like. Herb Jones, I love him, absolutely love him. But again, you have to be honest in terms of being the Pelicans. Is Herb Jones going to help you win now? I don't think so. I don't know what his ceiling is. It's tough to say what his ceiling is, but it would be crazy to say his ceiling is Kawhi Leonard. Look, he's a great defensive player. He's obviously got potential. He needs a bigger role as well. I felt like him and other players on the Pelicans definitely need bigger roles. I've voiced that in the past. But in terms of that, I do think he needs a move. He needs a change of scenery, and he's not necessarily going to be able to get that offensive role while being on the Pelicans. They also, the Clippers, that is, get a 2027 second round pick via Chicago. Should be a good second round pick considering it is the Chicago Bulls, who I don't expect will be good anytime soon. And they're probably on the verge of rebuild anyway. So it'd be a good pick. Again, you can make the argument maybe the Clippers could acquire a first round pick here. Would not surprise me. But look, again, not the sexiest of trades, but I'm looking at certain players like Jimmy Butler, Kawhi Leonard, and I'm looking at which teams would be desperate enough to trade him. Not that they're bad players or not that they are players that teams would not want to acquire, but this are the teams I've come up with. Pelicans are going to be desperate, guys. They want to win now. They're not waiting 2, 3 seasons from now. DeJounte Murray is locked under contract. Zion Williamson probably wants to win now, and they sense that he wants to win now. That's why they make the move for Kawhi Leonard. Anyways, guys, let me know your thoughts on these trades. I know some of them aren't the best, but I'm very curious to hear your thoughts. Do you like where some of these players are being traded? And let me know which trade was your favorite. That will be it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you guys have yourselves a great day.